Welcome to the Global Marketing Show, where we explore how language and culture impact global business. I'm Wendy Pease, your host and president of Rapport International. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Global Marketing Show. Before I introduce today's guest, which is going to be really interesting on English and English translation and pronunciation, we are going to get a tidbit from Rapport International, provider of high-quality language translation, which is written and spoken interpretation services. Populations, this is a good one. The 1991 breakup of the USSR caused extensive revisions of world maps and demographic statistics. One result was a change in the list of the world's most populous nations. Indonesia has now moved into fourth place behind China, India, and the United States. So, that was just another reminder to me that borders change, countries change, and I've certainly seen a lot in my life. So now let me go on and introduce Megan Nichols. She is a British business English and communication coach with nearly 10 years of international experience, specializing in helping multilingual professionals communicate with clarity, confidence, and authority at work. She works closely with leaders and global managers to improve cross-cultural communication, employee engagement, and real-world language use in international teams. So as I read her bio, I am kind of cracking up, Megan, about some of the spelling differences between U.S. and U.S. and British English. So welcome, Megan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad that it amuses you, the British English spelling.
What are some of the biggest surprises that you see in British and American English? I assume that you see some because it clearly states in your bio that you're a British business English coach.
Yeah, absolutely. The main difference is the U that we add in the British English compared to the American English, for example, in colour. I think it's just important to have the consistency because the main thing I see is that the switching between the two, that causes more confusion than just picking one.
Oh, right. So if you're going to learn one, pick one. Right. Yeah, and then if you think about spelling tests for kids, that could really mess people up if they're trying to learn the two.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Z and the S.
Yes.
So it's hard to stay consistent.
Yeah.
Especially with machines doing the auto-correcting. A lot of the time I write something that I know is correct in British English, but it marks it as wrong because it's not American English.
Are you seeing that with the technology a lot these days?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all defaulting to American English spelling.
Yes, I think this is considered the global spelling and more international spelling. But I know deep down in my heart that it is correct in the British way.
American English is just wrong.
I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just more internationally accepted.
When I first started traveling to Europe, the accents that I heard were more British. And now I've see that American English has become more prevalent a lot due to Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely. We see this a lot with the pop culture, music references, TV, movies. This is the accent that more people are exposed to, especially when they're learning. So then it comes across in their accent when they mimic it,
So tell me more about you. How did you get into doing what you do?
So my business Mega Language Coach is to help people speak more confidently with English. So it's normally professionals that have a pretty good understanding of English already, and they're looking to refine that and use it in the business world, specifically marketing. And I got into it in a roundabout way, but I'm so glad that I ended up here. So I've loved traveling and languages for as long as I can remember. I have studied languages and then decided that I love English language so much that I wanted to share it with other people. So after traveling the world for a lot of years, I've decided that I wanted to share this and use my marketing background to help other people be able to communicate clearer. I think English is becoming more and more important internationally. So any way that I can share these skills, I hope is valuable.
So you said something interesting that you're working with professionals to help them understand more for the business world. Tell me more about that. Why in marketing? Because I mistakenly made mistakes in thinking that you'd work with more like engineers, project managers on trying to get their point across, but you're specifically saying in marketing. Tell me more about that.
I work with people from lots of different industries all over the world, but because I have a marketing background and I worked in marketing in Germany, I think that kind of my knowledge then pairs well with my clients, that's what they're looking for, not just the linguistic skills, but also the marketing skills. Being able to broadcast a message internationally goes, with the localization and being able to transmit across cultures, not just across languages. I think that's a valuable skill that's not just a linguistic skill.
So tell me the difference between the linguistic skills and the marketing skills.
Yeah, so you can take a word from one language and then translate it quite simply into another. But there's not just one word that can work in that context, right? So there could be 20 words, synonyms that we see that have similar meanings or maybe subtle differences. And I think linguistically, you can choose one of those translations and it would be correct. But I'm kind of working with these managers and these professionals to see which culturally sensitive word might be more appropriate to use in a certain environment, depending on the tone or the product or the audience that they're trying to reach.
That's fascinating to me. So can you give an example of, and I know, client information is all confidential, but the type, give a story about somebody you've worked with.
Yeah, so I think the culture plays a really important part, which is often underestimated. So we take, for example, the UK and the US, and you think, okay, they speak the same language, same culture, pretty comparable, right? But if you look a little bit more deeply, you realize that there's a lot of differences. And so I coach a lot of my clients. For example, the British really love the understatement. We use a lot of softeners and a lot of downgraders in our language. So, for example, we might be giving feedback and we say, oh, it's not quite what I'm looking for. Whereas in my experience, Americans are a little bit more direct and they will say, yeah, this is not what we need at all, or we need to rework this. So it's just using the same message, but translating it for the audience that's intended to receive it.
Do you have clients that are British English speakers and you're working with them to teach the American English? Or
no, all of my clients are non-native speakers, so they're learning English to be able to use it for their profession.
And you mentioned that they were based all over the world. So do you have certain pockets of people that tend to come to you more?
I do have a soft spot in my heart for Germans. I feel like they get a bad rep internationally because of my linguistic background, speaking and living in Germany. I understand a lot more where they're coming from. So probably 50% of my clients are Germans, and then probably 50% are from the rest of the world, which is really exciting for me because no day is the same, and I get to feel like I'm traveling when I talk to my clients and they tell me about their cultures and their festivals and their languages.
When you think of language learning or custom learning, there's usually a syllabus or an outline of what somebody's going to work with. But if they're coming to you about marketing, it's got to be very industry specific. So do you lay out a game plan of what you're going to cover, or is it more like coaching where they come in and say, hey, I'm working on this. How do I look at it?
The short answer is both. Sometimes the sessions are very ad hoc and they say, oh, I've had a really tough day today. I didn't feel like I was communicating strongly in a meeting, or I wasn't able to do this pitch for a client. Can we look at this? Can we make this better? And pretty much anything I prepared kind of goes out the window and we focus on that need that comes up immediately. And we coach through that. Or I also try to have like a loose framework where we are building week on week and improving those skills. So we look at like idioms, which are really important, not only linguistically, but also culturally. And then we look at meetings and presentations. So we're building those core skills in an English context. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I try and keep it as individual as possible. I had a client, for example, who was going on maternity leave. And so we had planned to talk about something else that day, but it became very evident that we needed to figure out how to negotiate pay packets or maternity leave or all of the things that come into the business conversations about that specific topic, which we didn't know previously.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so then you had to help them negotiate. Where in the world were they located?
I think they were based in the UK, but they were non-native speakers. So it was about talking to their British manager and how that was going to work.
Okay, so it really is cultural coaching then too, because
Yeah,
what are the
absolutely.
words, what are the laws, what are the expectations, and how do you communicate?
Yeah, and I feel like these kind of things are not traditionally seen in business English textbooks. I've been teaching for 10 years and I've never seen this scenario, and it's a very real life scenario. It's an important way to communicate with a manager, but it's making the language livable, it's making it usable, and giving people the confidence to be able to talk about the things they need, not just the pre-prescribed business English materials, which I don't know about you, Wendy, but I feel like they're from, the 80s and they haven't been refreshed since. So I want to make it a little bit more exciting, not boring business as it's traditionally seen.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very particular and very confidential. So you really are serving like a coach.
Yeah.
And yeah, cultural coach, but it's with language. Yeah. What are, like, if you could categorize some of the mistakes or preconceptions that people come in with?
There's a couple of different categories. The first one is that you need to get rid of your accent. You need to completely remove any accent, which I try not to laugh at when I hear this, but it just makes me smile a little bit because we all have an accent, don't we? And there is no way that you can ever remove this. Also, there is no English accent, quote unquote, because how many types of English are spoken all over the world? How many speakers have a native accent, whether they're from the UK, the US, New Zealand, South Africa, India, Ireland? Like, there's so many native speakers and they all have different accents. So I really try and challenge this idea because I don't want to remove somebody's identity or their roots or their heritage of where they're from if they can be understood in the target language. I think that's an important thing to keep.
Right. Well, I'm also chuckling that if I think about the Manchester, England accent versus London, I had a hard time.
Exactly.
Really had to adjust my ears. Yeah, yeah. So just regionally. Yeah, but that's a good point, is you don't have to get rid of your accent, but there are people that have a very strong accent that can be harder to be understood. So
Sure.
how do you keep the accent, but also make it more clear so they have an easier time communicating?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you can be understood, that's the goal rather than being perfect. Because I work with so many like high-level professionals, this fear of perfectionism really plays into that. It has to be perfect, otherwise it's not going to happen. And with languages, the more you speak, the more your confidence will grow. It doesn't happen the other way around. You're not going to have a magic wand where your confidence appears and then you can speak, right? So it's very much coaching to put the ego to the side and bring out this mindset of, growth and not being perfect, and it's okay.
So really sticking with the growth mindset and the just do it kind of attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they feel like they have to get rid of the accents. You have to help them get rid of the fear of perfectionism. Have to help them speak. What are are there any other misconceptions or mistakes that they make?
Yeah, fear of like speaking with native speakers. So quite a lot of people use English as a bridge language, which I think is fascinating. So you might have somebody from France and somebody from Italy, and they don't speak the respective languages of each other. So they use English as a bridge. And this happens really commonly in Europe, where people speak 3 or 4 languages. And they seem to be okay in this situation. The confidence is not really lacking there because they're both non-native speakers, right? But then the fear comes in when somebody maybe flies in as a manager from the US or from the UK or wherever, and then they have to speak with a native speaker, and suddenly it feels like a whole different ball game. But it's actually the same skill that they've already been doing. So we have to, again, work on the mindset there.
What can the native English speakers do to make people feel more comfortable?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we always traditionally see it from the side of the learner that they have to, have more confidence or speak more clearly. But I think it's a nice way of looking at it from the native speaker side. Definitely speak slower. Definitely try to use less idioms if possible, because this is really where the confusion comes in when we talk in abstract images and ideas and nobody has a clue what's happening. So try and speak as clearly and as concretely as possible, and also give the opportunity to ask if anything needs repeating or anything needs rephrasing. I think that would be really valuable for the non-native speakers so that they don't have to ask themselves,
Right. I like that. Is there anything I need to rephrase? Because oftentimes I'll say, should I repeat that? But if you repeat it, you're going to get the same thing.
Right.
But rephrasing that, and I think living internationally when I was a kid, I naturally do like I'll say something. If I get a puzzled look, I'll try to rephrase it and try to rephrase it. But I never realized that until you said this now.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
being more deliberate. Yeah.
Because it might be one word or it might be one verb that's causing confusion, but they've understood the rest of the phrase. So if as native speakers we can use synonyms or a different way of describing it, it might just fill in the blanks that somebody's missing.
When we were talking about the translation or marketing, the similar meanings, but picking out the word that can be more culturally sensitive. I'd love to use that as a transition to talk about all the technology that's coming in, like AI for marketing translation and being aware of those cultural nuances. Can you tell me your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a trend that's going to increase more and more, and we're going to see a lot more cheaper and faster and quicker options. I don't think they're necessarily the best. And for me as a language learner, as well as a language teacher, the pure joy that comes from this whole process is learning about the culture, finding out about the history of that word or why the food is called this or the funny story behind the idiom. And yes, you can get from A to B with the technology that's happening, but you're missing out, for me, like the good stuff, and hearing from the native speakers and hearing about their festivals and their history and all of that, the thing that brings a language to life and makes it interesting and dynamic and almost like a living being, that the fact that it's changing all the time and it's growing and it's adapting to the way people live. And I think the machines are definitely missing that nuance, that human side, that connection, which for me is what languages are all about.
Are you seeing your clients start using AI to do their marketing?
Not necessarily to do the marketing, but to do the written communication. So things like emails or taking notes or sending agendas for meetings. Anything that's in written form is now more often than not happening with AI. But I would kind of put in there as well that this is happening with native speakers. People are not writing their own emails anymore, right? So why would we expect somebody to do it in another language if we're not doing it ourselves?
Right. Okay. So you're talking email, notes, agendas, things that aren't going to affect the revenue or the liability or the outreach or the real connection. But then for those other important things, you're still seeing humans highly involved?
At this moment, yes. I'm not sure if that's going to change. I hope that humans still stay involved, but that's just my perspective.
That's what I see as owner of a translation company, Rapport International. The technologists are coming in and say, yes, we can do this because language is just word for word or thought for thought or meaning for meaning. But they're not taking into account the growth, the change, the added words, the taking out, the cool speak that the younger generation brings in, the words that are lost because we don't use them anymore. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
Philosophical question. I hope I'm still traveling. I hope I'm still able to see the world. I would love to have learned more languages. It's really important for me to be practicing what I teach, not just talking about it in theory. So I don't want to send vocabulary lists and boring grammar to my students if I'm not learning it myself. I want to be able to understand the pain and the process with them. So that's important with my development. But I think in terms of technology, I think it will be a completely different landscape, and I don't know where it will be. But I think the coaching element and the mindset and the confidence tools that I equip my clients with, I think that will be invaluable regardless of what the rest of the world looks like.
Sounds like you've got a growth mentality of keep learning and keep trying. And yeah, yeah.
We have to adapt,
All
don't
right.
we?
We do have to adapt. Always. You had also mentioned, speaking of growth mindset, that there's a language called Danglish, I think you
Yeah,
called it.
I did.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's a little passion project of mine. So German is Deutsch, and then English is obviously English. So it's the amalgamation of the two languages. And we see this a lot, for example, in Spanglish or Franglais. And I just find it fascinating because it's linguistically funny because often the words get borrowed from one language or another and the meaning doesn't quite get translated or borrowed correctly. So we see lots of false friends taken. The one I hear on an almost daily basis is about my chef, which in German is my boss. I have to explain that just because chef means boss in German, it's not the same meaning in English. And you're not talking about somebody that's cooking. So this one makes me smile. But we also
Oh,
have
that's
some,
funny.
yeah, we have some words that are used completely wrong and can actually be alarming. So when I used to live in Germany, I went to a shopping centre and I saw family shooting, only €30. And I was absolutely shocked because this was marketing that had been approved by somebody and nobody saw any issue with it. And I explained to the people I was with that we wouldn't call it a shooting, we would call it a photo shoot. And it's a little bit different. So things like that still happen today, and I find it amusing.
Oh my God. So it was in English that said family shooting, or was it
So the
German?
words, it's in a
The
German
words.
ad. Yeah. So the
Yeah,
English word
yeah.
has been taken with the wrong meaning photo shoot. And it's in this perfectly German ad where it's like a happy, smiling family. And I'm like, oh my God, we can't be advertising this.
Oh, it is funny. You're talking about Danglish, and then there's Spanglish, and then there's Chinglish. And so I
Yeah.
never, there's a lot of them that are starting to merge like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Do you
languages
have,
are fluid, they go across borders between people. They're not just contained in one environment. And I think that's what makes it exciting, right?
right, right. Yeah, I have started creating a list of all the favorite foreign words that I asked my guests for. And there's so many words that describe emotions that we don't
Yeah.
have in English that it makes it so much richer when you go, oh, yeah, I know what that feeling is. And I never had a word for it. Or you'd have to struggle or use something else. So
Yeah.
I'm playing around with some of those. Yeah, yeah. All right. So, speaking of favorite foreign word, I think I've prepped you for this question. Are you ready for it?
It's hard to pick just one, Wendy. I thought of one from all the languages I speak, but I'll try and pick one if you want.
Your words. So, go ahead because we'll learn from them.
So the first one that sprung to mind was sacapuntas from Spanish. I learned this way before that I started learning Spanish, and I just think I love the way it sounds in my mouth, and I love stationery, so it means pencil sharpener in English, and yeah, I just think it sounds nice, sacapuntas.
Sacapuntas. Yeah.
Exactly. In German, my favorite is Herzblatt, which translates literally as like page of my heart. And I think in English we would say sweetheart. But I just love the idea of that heart being a book with lots of pages and you give a page to somebody else when you love them. I think that's really sweet.
That is. How do you spell that word?
Herzblatt, Herzblatt.
It's blood. That is nice. I like that symbolism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we often think of the Germans as like cold and guarded. And this is like, no, they're giving you a page from their heart. How nice is that? Sentimental.
That is the most sentimental word from German. Who would have guessed?
Exactly. I'm here to bring their reputation into a positive light. From French, I love parapluie, which means umbrella. Again, I love the way this sounds. I think it sounds really elegant and sophisticated. And we often need an umbrella in the UK, so it's very apt with all the rain. I went to Kenya on a voluntary trip when I was younger. and I had a really beautiful interaction with the local tribe there, and they gave me a name from the Masai Mara, which was Nashi Pai, and it means happiness and sunshine. And yeah, there's not really like one translation, but I love the way that we can gift somebody part of our language through names. I think that's really powerful.
Oh, that's great. Is that what, do you remember which tribal language it was?
From the Maasai tribe.
From the Maasai? And how do you spell that?
I don't know. Nobody ever wrote it down for me.
Nashi Pai.
Pai. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then my favorite word in English is kaleidoscope. I love the meaning and the symbolism behind it, of how we can all be made of different colors and different pieces of our lives. And I think as travelers and linguists and explorers, I think we become so many different fragmented parts that I think it makes a beautiful picture as a whole. So I like the symbolism behind that one.
That is wonderful, and it certainly captures the essence of you with liking to take the languages and cultures and the different colors and everything and see the beauty in it. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Yeah, yeah. Any final words that you'd like to share with people about insights that you have into language and culture?
I think that learning a language and translation, they don't need to be in opposites. I think they solve different problems. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be one or the other. I think you can learn a language and also use translation tools. And I think depending what your goal is, they can be used in different ways rather than contradictory ways.
That is extremely well said, because I speak some Spanish, but I wouldn't do our translation work because I'm not skilled enough in those areas. Actually, I take it back. I did one translation job, is where to find the information on the new pope when the new pope changed like 20 years ago.
And it's stayed with you ever since, Wendy.
I was like, yeah, I'm not going to charge you to tell you where to go in the Vatican. So I told the person that came to find it.
I think it's the same way that you would in your native language. You go with a specialist when you need one. Like, I wouldn't start doing medical or legal or financial recommendations, even though I speak English fluently. And so I think you need to go to a specialist for those areas. But if you're trying to build a relationship with somebody and get that human connection and trust, then maybe making an attempt to learn that language will come across well in, getting that visibility and that relationship with somebody.
That is so well said. I appreciate that, because that's how I can explain when you'd use a translator, when you'd use Google or when you'd use a professional or versus when you learn. Yeah. And your services are completely valuable. How can people reach you if they'd like to learn more?
Yeah, I would love to hear from some listeners. So I'm online as Mega Language Coach. I've got a website, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. And I've just launched a 10-week program for expats, actually, moving abroad, where they are going to need English. So this is really to put it into a practical situation, doing the bureaucracy, going and finding an apartment, making new friends, to really make the language livable and usable. But I've got lots of different programs which you can download or enjoy in person, one-to-one.
Oh, that's great to know. And so our listeners, so you know, is Mega Language Coach, is MEGA Language Coach. And if you know about Linktree, she's got a Linktree with all your links on it. So we'll put that in the show notes. So if you want to find her or follow her, or learn more about the programs, you'll be able to do that.
Absolutely. If you look anywhere online, it'll be the pink logo. I try and be bright and visible, and you'll be able to find me.
You're our pink sunshine, our pink nashi pie, huh?
I try.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Thanks for having me, Wendy.
Yeah, I learned a lot. And listeners, I hope you learned something too. So if you wouldn't mind going and giving this episode or the podcast a 5-star rating, we really appreciate it. Or reach out to us. You can go to our website at rapporttranslations.com, and you can go to the podcast or contact us or reach out if there's somebody that you'd like to hear. So that is all for now, and we'll look forward to catching up with you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Global Marketing Show. We started this podcast to capture the stories of people who do global marketing and work for companies that export, since those companies have higher revenues, higher profits, higher valuations, higher salaries, and more stability, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And if you know somebody who would be a good guest, introduce them to me, your host, Wendy Mackenzie Pease. If you'd like to learn more about global marketing or language translation and interpretation, visit Rapport International's Resource Center at www.rapporttranslations.com. Au revoir. Hasta luego. Ciao for now.